Photography is the world's favourite pastime. Every year we spend billions of dollars and euros on equipment in the hopes of capturing better photographs. Every day, billions of photos are uploaded online and shared throughout the world. So how can you make your photography stand out? Investing in our photography also means investing in our education to acquire the knowledge to use our cameras to achieve our unique vision of the world. There are so many reasons people take up photography. It is personal. We want to capture our lives and document our loved ones. Or perhaps you want to turn it into a career and make a living from your passion. Whatever your goal is, our photos are our legacy and will be enjoyed by generations to come. So learn to take the best photographs that you can right now. Our mission here is to change lives by providing great education which is accessible and affordable to everyone all over the world, giving you the flexibility to learn your way. Here at Shaw Academy, we offer real engagement, qualifications and success, allowing you to achieve your goals and build upon your career. Hello everyone and welcome to the Professional Diploma in Photography. Welcome to lesson number 1. What do you want to photograph? My name is William Eames. I am your course educator throughout this Professional Diploma in Photography. I just want to say a big thank you to all of you for choosing to study with Shaw Academy and for choosing to study with myself. I do hope that you're really excited about this Professional Diploma in Photography. Just a little bit about my background and my educational history. I have both a BA and an MFA in photography from IDT Dunleary in Dublin, and then from my master's from the University of Ulster in Belfast. I have been practicing photography now for 20 years, so it's been a huge part. In fact, it's been most of my life, and I've worked in nearly every aspect of photography, so I have a very broad experience when it comes to both the technical side, the creative side, and the more business side of photography, all of which we'll be exploring throughout this course. Now, we are on the first module of a 4-module course. You must complete all 4 modules to obtain your professional diploma in photography, and each module has 8 lessons. So we're at the basic level now, although hopefully you won't find the content to be too basic, but we'll be covering 8 lessons in this module and then moving on to our intermediate, which covers another 8 lessons, and so on, all the way up until we get our professional diploma in photography. Now, if you've any questions at all in relation to the course or relation to your student area or any feedback or anything like that at all, you can chat with Morpheus, our AI, who's here to help. Do interact there. I'll be asking you plenty of questions throughout the course as well, so you can type in and respond to Morpheus there. We do see all of the responses and we are constantly trying to improve them as well. So if you get responses that maybe not exactly what you were hoping for, don't worry, we will update those responses and your experience will improve as we continue on throughout these lessons. Speaking of lessons, let's have a look at what we're going to be covering in this very first one, and we're going to start off by explaining why we take photographs, which might seem kind of obvious, but it's important to understand exactly what the purpose of photographs are. And we take photographs every single day for lots and lots of different reasons, and we really need to have a good idea of exactly what we're trying to communicate every time we take a photograph. We'll have a look at how you can begin to develop your own style, which is something that many students embark on this course for. You may have some knowledge around photography already, but are struggling to kind of find your own voice, for want of a better word, when it comes to your photography. So that's something that will certainly develop as we move on throughout this course. We'll explore different types of camera as well. If you're considering buying a camera, if you don't currently have a camera, this could be very useful to you. We'll have a look at some tips for buying a camera as well, and then finally we'll have a look at how your camera works and learn all about the most fundamental thing in photography, which is the capturing of an exposure, and we'll have a look at that a little bit more towards the end of the lesson. But let's get into the first part and explore why do we take photographs. And there's so many different reasons reasons for why we take photographs, and we'll explore some of the most important ones. And I think probably the first one that will jump out to us is memory. I mean, one of the reasons that we take photographs is simply that we want to remember important events in our lives. Think about, family albums. Most of us hopefully have a family album of some sort. Now, many of them, we put them online, we put them onto Instagram or Facebook or other kind of social media platforms. Hopefully you have some copies on your computer as well. You've got them backed up so that you don't lose them. But we still document our families, we still document our everyday lives to remember important events in our lives, and for archival purposes as well, so that future generations can look back on photographs and see what life was like, for their parents, for their grandparents, for their ancestors. And it's really, really important to do this, so for future generations to have an idea, an identity, and a sense of place of where they have come from. So while you may not think so much of it now, photography and time go together, and time changes photographs and it makes them more important, and eventually it makes them become art as well. So really important to take photographs of our everyday lives. We use photography for documentation. We use it for legal purposes, for our passport photographs, our driving licenses, any kind of government type of documentation. It's used for mugshots and things like that. So it does have a function as well. It's not always just about the artistic side of things and the kind of creative side of things. Photography serves a very important function in our everyday lives. Think about the amount of documentations, and anytime you're applying for, say, something like a bank loan or anything like that you have to have a photograph as proof of your identity. Creativity, of course, and I'd say the majority of people that are on this course are here to learn how to be more creative with their cameras, and that's certainly something that we will be focusing on, is how that you can become much more unique with your photography and use photography as a creative outlet for you. And photography is great in the sense that it's accessible to everybody. Anyone can pick up a camera, and particularly now with phones as well, it's never been easier, but it's hard to stand out, and it's hard to sometimes achieve what your vision is for your photography. And that's certainly what we want and what we aim to develop on this course. Photography is also used to raise awareness. Think about the history of photography. And I mean, the history of photography, it's still relatively new, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things. But you think about, particularly, during the 20th century, the iconic photographs that we remember, like, say, the photographs of the moon landing, or, even just photography in the 60s in general. It was used so much to kind of raise awareness of things that were happening, the changes that were happening throughout the world. Think about war photography. Think about photography that you see every day in the newspapers. Think about, current events, recent events, like the big protests that are happening, around kind of climate change and everything like that. We take photographs to bring awareness to important current events, to discover what's happening elsewhere in the world, and hopefully to react and to do something positive about it. So it's a very, very important tool in terms of raising awareness. Photography is also used, of course, to make an income. And again, many of you may be embarking on this course. You might be a little bit more advanced with your photography already, and you're looking to take the next step and to do something where you can begin to make some money with your photography. And it's a really good idea, even if you're you have a job already. You could even embark on doing some part-time work with your photography, because one thing that we all know as photographers is that photography is really expensive. It is a very, very expensive pastime. So a lot of photographers will make money with their photography to put it back into their photography, to invest in better equipment, and basically to fund their passion. And finally, and perhaps the most important thing, no matter what reason we decide, or what area of photography we decide that we want to pursue, we photograph because we want to communicate what matters to us. More than likely, when you picked up a camera, whether consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, you did it because you wanted to communicate and capture things in the way that you see them, because the way that you see them is unique. And everybody who takes a photograph will always bring their own kind of take to it, even if it's 100,000 photographs of the same sunset. Each photographer will have some slightly different thing, slightly different way of capturing it than the photographer standing next to them. So we photograph because we want to communicate what matters to us. And I certainly know when I first picked up a camera, it was because I did want to capture things the way that I saw them, and to try and communicate not what was just going on outside, but also photography is a way of communicating what's happening inside you as well. And that's, I think, what makes it so important to us. So we'd love to know, what are your reasons for taking photographs? Let us know via Morpheus, why you decided to join the course, what you hope to achieve from it, and why you picked up a camera in the first place. What kind of sparked your interest in photography and made you decide that you wanted to do something more with it. And the fact that you've embarked on this course does show that you want to achieve something more with it, that you want to get something more from your photography, and to take photographs that are truly unique to you. Now, let's have a look at how you can begin to develop your own style, how someone can look at one of your photographs and know that it was taken by you. Now, this is something that does not happen overnight. It takes years and years to develop, to truly kind of find what you want your photographs to look like, and it happens at many different stages. It happens from right before we take the photograph, what we decide to photograph, how we take the photograph, and then what we do afterwards when we do our editing to our photographs, which is something that we will certainly be exploring much later on in the course. But here are some tips and some, I suppose, truths about photography that you must come to accept when it comes to developing your style. So think about what you want to photograph. Okay, so we'll explore some different genres of photography and why it's worth exploring them as well, first of all. So landscape photography, perhaps the most popular area in photography, and it's a great way to get started with your photography, to get familiar with your camera, to get comfortable with the settings, because you can practice on your own, you can take your time, you can make mistakes, you're not under pressure, and you can get some truly great photographs as well. And there's something peaceful as well about waiting for the right light, thinking about how you're going to compose the photograph, taking your time with it. Landscape photography, a great one to try out and to explore. Right up there in terms of popularity, portrait photography as well. And portrait photography, it's more difficult in the sense that you're dealing with people. So communication is the key thing when it comes to good portraits. Having a good relationship with the person that you're photographing, making them feel at ease, will result in good candid photographs. And it's not just a case of constant communication with who you're photographing to get the best photographs. And the idea of a portrait is that it's going to reveal one or more aspects of that person's character. So portraits, a huge amount of fun as well to experiment and to capture. Wildlife photography, one of the most popular forms of photography, certainly on this course. We've got a huge number of students taking this course to improve the quality of the wildlife photographs that they take. For example, we have a lot of students from South Africa who would be taking this course, and obviously you've got those great kind of wildlife parks and everything over there, so that you can really get these amazing wildlife shots, but you don't have to be in exotic locations to take great wildlife photographs. Think about your local flora and fauna, and explore your own country, your own territories, for the wonderful wildlife that's out there for you as well. It is a more tricky area of photography to excel in, but it's absolutely not impossible, and we have dedicated lessons to this a little bit later on in module number 2. Macro photography is a great area to explore for beginners and for advanced photographers alike, because you can get great macro photographs using something like your smartphone. Smartphones are great devices for getting very, very close to an object. They've got very close focus ranges, which it makes it quite easy then to get, good close-ups, good macro shots. But it's also a really technical area. If you are into more kind of difficult and tricky photography, if you want to be a truly great macro photographer, it takes a huge amount of work, as we'll see moving on. You might be more into conceptual type of photography, and this is a type of photography that certainly when I was younger I practiced a lot, and going through college there was a heavy focus on this type of photography. And conceptual photography is all about coming up with an idea and seeing that idea through. Conceptual photography, it can incorporate lots of different types of photography. It can be things that you construct. It can be things that you create using images and bringing them together using some type of software. Or it can be just things that you capture out there in the real world, but have captured them with a common theme or a common idea running through the photographs. This is where, fine art photography also kind of comes in as well. Photographs that I suppose have a secret to them, that take a little bit of time to reveal what that secret, what that meaning is behind them. Then you've got commercial photography, which is all about photographing products, all about photographing brands and so on, all with an aim to help to sell that product. So this is certainly an area that if you are thinking about making some money with your photography, that you should definitely be exploring. This type of work requires very high technical skills. You really, really need to know a lot about your lighting in particular. You need to learn how to use a flash, you need to learn how to use studio lights, all of which we will be covering in our studio lessons. Documentary and journalism. So I spoke a little bit earlier about the idea of raising awareness with our photography, and certainly documentary style photography and journalism fall into that category. Now, where they differ, documentary style photography generally is a collection of photographs that are used to tell a story. So, for example, you can do a documentary about nearly anything. So, say, for example, you want to document the wine making process. So, just pluck that one out of my head. But say, I'm still thinking about South Africa, I suppose, wine, the white wine down there. But you might document the vineyard, you might document, the growing of the grapes, the growing of the plants, and then the processing of it, all the way through, to the bottling and the production side of it. And all of that is a documentary. Journalism kind of focuses much more on the immediacy of events, the things that are happening right now. The photographs are taken, and in the very next day they're on our news screens or they're in our newspaper. So it's much more current, and it's much more fast, and it is a very difficult and sometimes a very, very different very dangerous area to get into. We have street photography then, which is exactly as it sounds, is getting out there and photographing on the street, photographing these everyday events that happen. Sometimes, with a kind of a humorous slant to it, or kind of photographing the kind of absurdity and the surreal of everyday life. I love doing this type of photography just for practice every single day. To be truly great at street photography, though, requires a serious amount of patience and dedication. Then we've got, sport photography, a very technical photography type, again requiring really huge technical skills to be able to capture incredible photographs like this. Food photography, an area that's become huge over the last couple of decades. I mean, food photography has always been out there, but I suppose really kind of sparked by Instagram, and Instagram just over a decade old now at this stage, but it was kind of mocked in the beginning because people were posting pictures of food and coffee and so on. But I actually think that this kind of drove people to want to do much more with their food photography. And I mean, the main aim with food photography is to make something look good enough to eat. Literally, that's the idea of food photography, is to make you salivate and make you want to eat it. And if your food photographs do that, well, then you have succeeded. So what type of photography there appeals to you? And my advice, of course, would be to try them all out. And I know that there's lots of different kind of genres and styles there that are left out too, but it's just, photography is just so vast, and there's lots of kind of blurring of the lines when it comes to different styles and genres as well. But it is important to think about it, and as you continue on with your photography, you'll eventually find areas that you prefer to others. Like, for example, I love photographing nature, wildlife. I'm not so great at photographing people, but that's just something that I discovered after decades now of photographing at this stage. So you're continually growing as a photographer. But no matter what type of photography appeals to you, there are a few key things that you need to understand when developing your style. And first of all, technique matters, and we haven't touched on technique yet, but we will in just a few moments. But it's really important to understand your camera settings and equipment, as this simply opens up more options to you, and more options means more creative approaches. Technique and creativity go hand in hand, and some people are naturally creative, but they struggle with the technical side of things, which means it can be really frustrating to not be able to take the type of photograph that you're capable of taking, but you're held back by the fact that you don't understand how your camera works or the functions of your camera. So it's really, really important to master technique, as the creative side of that will come in time, and it's something that you'll develop over years. Technique can be mastered quite quickly. Do look to the past as well. Take inspiration from past photographers and peers, and to find direction with your own photography. So, look to other people's work. I'm sure there's photographers, there's artists, there's writers, there's filmmakers out there that you admire. Take inspiration from all these different sources of art that you admire and put that into your own photography. Look at the history of photography as well. And very, very likely, if you have an idea or if you have something that you want to do, it has probably been done before, or something similar has been done. So it's a really good idea to do your research and to look to the past to help with your own work. Share your photographs. It's ironic that many photographers actually don't like to share their work. Many photographers are shy, and I think it's because we fear criticism. I think we fear people not liking our photographs, or what I think is even worse than people not liking our photographs is just being indifferent to them. It's just not really feeling anything about them at all. But it's important to get your photographs seen. Okay, you'll get feedback on your photography, whether it's good or whether it's bad, and over time you will see an improvement with your photography. It's really a good thing to do, to go back, if you've been photographing for years or even just months, and go back over the photographs that you were taking compared to the photographs that you are now, and you kind of see that you're on a journey. Sometimes when I look back at the very first photographs that I take, there was kind of an innocence to the things that I was photographing. But I also didn't focus on the technical side of things at the time, and I kind of just enjoyed photography for what it was. Then when I got into the technical side of things, I started questioning everything that I did with my photography. But then I kind of came through it again, and I'm back to just enjoying my photography, but now also having the technical skills to capture what I want to be able to capture. You need to embrace criticism. So if you are sharing your photographs, you have to be prepared, to receive criticism. And if you're giving criticism as well, be sure that it's, constructive. You want criticism that will guide you and tell you maybe what's wrong or what's right in the photograph, what works in the photograph or what doesn't work in the photograph. Don't just criticize for the sake of criticizing. Don't just say you dislike a photograph because maybe of what the person is wearing in the photograph. That's not constructive criticism. That's just criticizing the person in the photograph, or something that the photographer doesn't have any control over. If you're going to criticize a photograph, you should be criticizing something that the photographer does have control over and can change when they're taking their next photograph. And you need to realize that being unique takes time. As I mentioned earlier, if you look to the past, many of your ideas will have been done before, and it takes time to find your own style. to find something that is all your own. And it's not impossible, you know, it can just take a huge amount of time. And as I said, you know, being unique is all about, before you take the photograph, what you decide to photograph, how you take the photograph, and then what comes after when you do your editing as well. All these are parts of what creates your final image. And really important, keep learning. I'm still learning. And every day you're going to be learning. And photography is great because, you know, we photograph the world around us. So we're constantly learning about the world around us. You should be learning about the subjects that you're photographing. And in turn, you're going to be learning about yourself. And photography is all about ownership. It's all about, you know, ownership of your images. And as I said, making your images unique to you. But that's also about understanding yourself. You can't make something unique to you if you don't truly understand yourself, and this will help you to take better photographs. With that in mind, throughout these courses, we will be having a look at your skills and your progression, and I'm going to break it down into creativity, into technical skills, into comprehension. We'll also have a look then at editing at a much later stage. And you know, as we're very early on in the course, you know, so far we've only been speaking about kind of different styles, identity, artistry, composition. I'm sure, you know, some of you have skills beyond where we're at this stage, but I'm going to take this as our starting point, and we'll continue to build upon these in every single lesson. Identity is a little bit more advanced there, because obviously we're bringing ourselves to these courses, but you already have, you know, a unique identity with your photography. It's just a case of developing that now. Similarly with composition, you have a particular way that you see the world and that you compose your photographs. And then our artistry, again, something we're going to be unique to us and that we'll certainly be developing. So with all of that in mind, I think it's time that we start having a look at some of our technical skills and start digging into different types of camera and how our cameras work. Now, I've broken down the cameras that we're going to be having a look at here into three different areas. We've kind of got an entry level, intermediate, and then interchangeable lens cameras. When you're looking for cameras online, or you know, you're trying to find out a little bit more about the camera that you're using, it can be a little bit of a nightmare, because nearly every different website, every different kind of manufacturer kind of uses different terminology when they're describing the different levels of camera, so it can get a little bit confusing. But I've tried to generalize it as much as possible, or to simplify it as much as possible, beginning with our entry level cameras. Ones that are most accessible to all of us, starting off with our smartphones. And smartphones have come a huge way, even since I started teaching this course a good number of years ago. And they really, there's a strong case to be made for them now, so much so, in fact, that we actually have a course dedicated to smartphone photography. I'll speak about that in a second, but you shouldn't underestimate your smartphone and what it's capable of doing. Yes, there are certainly limitations with it, but if you're thinking about, you know, investing in, say, a compact camera, I'd really weigh it up against the smartphone that you may be currently using or considering purchasing in the future. And we pay a lot of money now for smartphones, mainly because of the improvements when it comes to image quality and the cameras. So, I mean, the advantages here, of course, they're small and portable. We have them with us all the time. They're very fast. They're easy to use. There's instant sharing options, so we can put them onto Instagram straight away, or we can email them to relatives and so on. So that's a huge thing, being able to share your photographs straight away. There's a huge amount of different apps out there for editing. There's some apps out there as well to help utilize your actual camera a little bit better as well. Some of these are free, some of them we need to pay for, but basically we have everything that we need in one single device. Where they are limited, of course, comes to lenses and image sensor size. So image sensor size refers to the actual size of the area that captures the photograph, and as you can guess, you know, within a smartphone, it's going to be quite small given the size of your phones. So we're also limited then by the lenses, of course, as well. Now, some phones will give you an option of wide and telephoto lenses, but They're not wide or telephoto in the strictest sense. They're just changing the area that the sensor actually captures to zoom in the image if needs be. And these phones that have the option of different lenses, they tend to be very, very expensive as well. Now, of course, you can also buy lenses that you can attach to them too, but good ones are very expensive. Phones themselves can be very expensive, as we know, if you're going for the latest and greatest iPhone, Samsung, Huawei, or whatever your preference may be, and the pro versions of them, you can be spending up to $1,000, if not more, on them. So they can be crazy money. But all of that said, they are by far the most popular type of camera in the world. Now, if you are using a smartphone at the moment and you haven't got a camera, you may think about looking at the diploma in smartphone photography, which I also teach as well. So, if you're feeling that this course may be focusing a little bit too much on cameras, you can absolutely check out the diploma in smartphone photography, which is purely just about how to get better photographs using your phones, and that's available there for you to add in your student area. So do consider having a look at that, if you are using your smartphone at the moment, or of course you can continue on this course, whatever is your preference. Now, next we have our compact cameras, and again, compact cameras have changed quite a lot, certainly over the last decade, because of smartphones. They've had to change to kind of keep up, and compete with smartphones. But again, small and portable in the most case. Some can actually be quite chunky. They're designed to be fast and easy to use, but again, there's more professional versions of compact style cameras out there for people that want a little bit more but still want to have something that's quite small and portable. Where they can have a big advantage over smartphones is that there is zoom lenses built into them. So in other words, you can get good zoom ranges in a small compact camera, giving you more options when you're photographing. You still have small image sensors, again, due to the size, but they tend to be a little bit larger than what you find in smartphones. You've got a huge variety of different shooting modes available to you. Some will actually even give you fully manual mode, but again, for the kind of professional type versions, or ones that are aimed at serious enthusiasts, they can be very expensive. You can start very low in price for them, from about $200, €200, but at that range, it's hard to recommend them over a smartphone. So really, if you want to get something that's going to give you significantly better results over a smartphone, unfortunately, you're going to be going from about €500, $500 upwards. So for that reason, I do think that the lower end ones are becoming a little bit redundant due to smartphones. It's hard to recommend them over a good quality smartphone. Now, moving into the enthusiast area, we really only have one camera to have a look at in this range, and that's our bridge, or sometimes they're known as hybrid cameras as well. And these are basically a stepping stone into moving into interchangeable lens cameras, but they also have a purpose as well, in that they're very convenient if you don't want to be carrying around a huge amount of equipment or lenses. They're a larger size compared to our compacts, so you're going to be carrying a little bit more. They're very convenient for travel, and the reason I say that is they have immense zoom ranges. So bridge cameras, the main advantage that they have is that you can have serious zoom ranges. Like for example, there's the Nikon P series, which I think they have 80 times zoom. So that means if you're zooming in 80 times from the widest point, which is crazy. And that's actually more than any lens that you could possibly buy for a mirrorless or a DSLR. So they're great for budding photographers. So if you're beginning your photography and you're not sure where to start, this is a good place to look at. But just be aware, you cannot change lenses with these cameras. They certainly offer a huge amount of more control over compacts and over phones. As I mentioned, they have those enormous zoom ranges, but fundamentally your lens cannot be changed with these cameras. That is the key difference with these types of cameras compared to the interchangeable lens cameras. Speaking of which, they do have a little bit more limited quality compared to DSLRs just by their construction. So there's so much going on in the lenses, and the sensor sizes still tend to be a little bit smaller than what you'd find in our DSLRs and our mirrorless cameras. So they lack a little bit in quality when compared side by side with our interchangeable lens cameras, which we'll speak about next. And starting off with our mirrorless cameras. So mirrorless cameras, they are smaller and lighter than our digital single lens reflex cameras, and this is due to the fact they do not have a mirror inside them, which I'll explain all about in just a few minutes. But this allows them to be much smaller and lighter than a DSLR. These are cameras where you can absolutely change the lenses on them. They can have very large sensor sizes, all the way up to medium format sensor sizes. Now, we are going to be speaking a lot more about sensors in the next lesson, so don't worry too much about them now. But there's a variety of sensor sizes available with these cameras, meaning that there's different qualities available to you. Of course, as you go with larger sensor sizes, you're going to be spending a lot more money. Very fast frames per second, and what I mean by that, they can take a lot of photographs very rapidly in succession or in sequence. So, and this is because, again, due to the lack of a mirror. So, for example, a DSLR, I think you can get maybe a maximum, now I might be wrong on this, but about 14 frames a second. So say you're photographing sports, I mean, even 14 frames a second is incredibly fast. But with mirrorless cameras, you can get some cameras that are capable of doing 20 or 30 frames per second, nearly double. So, and in some cases double. So that's an incredible advantage if you're doing sports or any kind of fast action movement or anything like that. For sports photographers, for wildlife photographers, you know, these cameras make a very, very strong case. There's less vibrations with them as well. Now, again, this is only in very particular circumstances, but what I mean by this is, again, due to a lack of a mirror, sometimes when we're photographing with DSLRs, we do a long exposure, the mirror comes back down. It can cause what's known as a mirror slap, which actually causes a little bit of a vibration. Again, with a lack of a mirror, no mirrors in these cameras, you're avoiding something like that. The lens range is a little more limited compared to DSLRs, and that's purely just because DSLRs have been around for so much longer. Now, of course, there's all manner of adapters out there that you can use to adapt older lenses onto these types of cameras and that, but you run into errors and you run into problems with the autofocus systems. So, you know, that's the reason I say they're a little more limited when it comes to DSLRs, but really not by much at this stage. There's so much investment into these types of cameras now. And I mean, again, in the amount of years that I've been teaching this course, like I don't think I even included this type of camera when I first started teaching this course, and now they've become, you know, the dominant type of camera. The cameras that I get asked most about are mirrorless cameras. The main thing I would say, because I'm sure many of you are already asking this question, is which is better. There is no difference in image quality compared to the DSLRs. Fundamentally, your image is captured on the sensor, and you can have a similar sensor in a mirrorless camera and in a DSLR. So when all is said and done, the images are going to be of the same quality. Okay, the differences come, as I mentioned, from the weight, from the size. Some of the technology in mirrorless cameras is very, very advanced. But when it comes to the most important thing, which is image quality, there is no difference in image quality compared to DSLRs. And in fact, mirrorless cameras, they're also, in most cases, as expensive, or in some cases more expensive than DSLRs. Now, all of that said, let's have a look at our DSLR, which is our digital single lens reflex. Digital single lens reflex, that's what a DSLR stands for. Basically, this means we can change the lenses on these cameras, and the reflex action comes from that mirror that's inside the camera that moves out of the way to allow the light to pass through for the image to be taken. Now, the reason that a DSLR has a mirror inside of it, it means that we can simply see through the camera. So a DSLR uses an optical viewfinder, which means we're just seeing light reflected off a mirror that allows us to see through it. With a mirrorless camera, we use an electronic viewfinder, which is, as it sounds, it's a digital image that we're actually looking for, or looking at, rather than coming through a mirror. This is the standard for amateurs and pros for decades now. Highest quality and control. Lenses can be changed. Again, we have large sensor sizes with these cameras up to full frame. Lots and lots of lenses available because historically you can use lenses from film cameras provided they are the same mount. Big price ranges available. So the reason I mentioned this is that if you're considering buying your first camera and you're unsure about whether to go with a mirrorless or a DSLR, in my opinion, you'll get a lot more bang for your buck at lower price ranges if you go for a DSLR compared to if you go for a mirrorless camera. Okay, but as you go higher in price, it gets harder to make an argument for which one you should go for. The big disadvantage with them, however, especially at the larger ones, like something like the Nikon D850 here, is that they can be very clunky and very heavy to carry around. Now, for the last two, we're kind of looking at more specialist type of cameras, but they're well worth including here. Starting off with a rangefinder. And a rangefinder differs significantly from the other cameras that we've had a look at here, because with a rangefinder, they are trickier to use, first of all, because of the focusing system on them. You don't look through the lens on a rangefinder. What you're looking at through is, as you can see here, if the square up here on the right hand side, that's actually where you compose your image, and you focus using dual range focus device. In other words, there's these two little squares that you see when you look through the rangefinder. And as you're changing the focus on the lens, those squares will come together and will let you know when you have your subject in focus. Okay, but you're not actually looking through the lens. So for that reason, they can actually be a little bit trickier to use. However, the image quality from these types of cameras is extraordinary. It's very, very high. Now, one of the reasons for this is because the distance between the back of the lens and where the image is captured is reduced, because again, we don't have a mirror in these types of cameras. They're extremely quiet as well, and for this reason they're very much preferred for doing street photography. You know, they're kind of synonymous with doing street photography, especially throughout the history of photography. Famous street photographers of the 20th century certainly would have favoured this type of camera. They have very, very sharp lenses. However, they are very expensive, particularly Leica cameras. If you look up a Leica camera, you know, you'll gasp at the price. So they are extraordinarily expensive cameras, and for that reason, sometimes, you know, they can be kind of elitist. They're also somewhat limited in some areas of photography. You can't really use a rangefinder for doing wildlife or doing sports. It's very hard to find zoom lenses for these types of cameras or telephoto lenses. They tend to go with much wider and kind of portrait style lenses, because they simply just work better with this style, with this system of camera. So rangefinders are a little bit more unique, but they've been around for a very, very long time. And as I said, many of the famous street photographers of the 20th century would have preferred this style of camera. They can be, when you get used to using them on the street, there's a particular way that you can use these cameras. You can actually be extraordinarily fast with them. So sometimes if you wonder how street photographers get these extraordinary images, very often it's just down to years of practice and technique and using a camera such as these. Finally then, we have our medium format cameras, and medium format comes from the fact that these have a larger, well, in the past it was a film plane, so they took much larger film, or they still take much larger film, but now it's also a much larger image sensor. So much larger image sensor means much higher image quality. In fact, the highest image quality. Highest quality and control as well. So, you know, you have a huge level of control with these types of cameras. Very large megapixel ranges. I mean, you're talking hundreds of megapixels in certain medium format cameras. So you get huge quality and huge detail with these types of cameras. However, they are, again, serious money. You know, Hasselblad cameras, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. The Fuji G series, a little bit more affordable, but you're still talking $6,000-7,000. You know, I think that's even then without the lenses, which you're spending, you know, thousands of dollars on them as well. They are also very, very large cameras. to use too. So these types of cameras would be more at home in the studio, used for portrait, for commercial type of photography and that as well. You see these huge billboards and really lucrative advertising campaigns, fashion advertising, all of that. This is typically what you'd use a medium camera for. Now, if you do happen to be buying your first camera, just a couple of tips from myself. Now, I worked in camera shops, what I was cutting my teeth as a photographer. So just to give you kind of a little bit of, I suppose, insider information. But if you happen to be buying your first camera, have a budget set out for yourself, but do have some wiggle room, because very often if you spend an extra €100, $100, you may get a deal where you get a second lens, or you get a case included with it, with a memory card and that. So it's a good idea to have a little bit of wiggle room, to go a little bit over in some cases. $500, €500 is absolutely more than enough to begin with. You can get yourself a DSLR for that price. You probably struggle to get yourself a mirrorless camera for that price. That would be at the same level as a DSLR, but you can definitely get DSLRs for that kind of price range to begin with. If you are reading the reviews, read them with a pinch of salt. So, for example, someone might review a $500 DSLR and, give it an average score, but they might be comparing it to the best of the best DSLRs that are out there. So you really need to just read reviews with a pinch of salt, because especially when it comes to brands, with cameras, people are very loyal to their brands. So just do take them with a pinch of salt. Take your time, and I do recommend visiting camera shops. Do support your local camera shops. Go into them. It's a good idea to talk to experts. Good idea to get your hands on the camera that you want, that you're thinking about buying as well, because how it feels is really, really important. Your kit lens is enough to begin with. You don't need to go out and buy a portrait lens. You don't need to go buy a telephoto lens. You don't need to go buy a macro lens straight away. Start with what you have, get used to it before you decide to invest in another lens. Good places to start, the old reliables, Canon and Nikon. They've been around for, again, decades upon decades at this stage. Definitely worth starting with them, but kind of, you can move out from them as you kind of decide exactly what it is you're looking for from your camera. Every camera is capable of a great photo as well. So, don't get into those kind of brand wars, Canon, Nikon, Sony, Pentax, Fuji, or whichever. Again, you can be loyal to a brand, but that's not to say that the other brand isn't capable of taking a great photo as well. And it comes down to the person using the camera rather than the gear itself. And mirrorless cameras are a great option, but you are going to be spending a little bit more. So if you want that kind of compactness from a mirrorless camera, you are going to have to be spending a little bit more than €500, $500 to get something that, in my opinion, is going to give you good image quality as well. Okay, now, so with all of that in mind, let's have a look at how our cameras actually work. And this is where we'll kind of lead off into our next lesson. So we're going to have a look at how the camera actually captures an exposure. And to do that, we need to first understand the camera obscura. So you may have come across this before, certainly if you've ever looked at the history of photography or even just the history of art. And the camera obscura, as you can see here, it was a device that was used for painters, by mathematicians, architects, everything, to be able to record the outside world. So when you have a box like this, or a room, or any kind of darkened area, and there's a small little opening that allows the light to pass through, the outside image will actually be projected onto the opposite wall. It'll be upside down and back to front. But this is what allowed artists to be able to paint portraits that were very, very realistic. Like here, you'd have your sitter, they'd be sitting down, and the artist was able to kind of trace the outlines, and then would kind of, paint in everything else afterwards. But the technology around lenses developed over history, and these camera obscuras were able to become smaller and portable, and be able to be used, as I said, by mathematicians, architects, and indeed by painters in a much more kind of portable type of way. And this is the basis of how our camera works. So how this works, and it's actually a very similar way to how our eyes work as well, you would have your subject. The light is reflected off our subject and enters through this little hole and is then projected on the far end, as I said, upside down. It's actually back to front as well, on the far wall. Now, you might be familiar with pinhole cameras, and this is the exact same idea as what we use a pinhole camera for. How photography was developed was with this idea, but it wasn't until light-sensitive material was discovered that we were actually finally able to record the image on and then to make it permanent. And that's when photography really began, and that was back in 1839. So with that idea, this is exactly how our modern day cameras still work. Okay, so let's have a look at this, and we'll use a DSLR for this particular example. I'll show you how a mirrorless camera works now in just a moment as well. But if we were to cut our DSLR camera in half and have a look at the inside, this is what we are going to see. Okay, so as we can see here, first of all, light is entering through the lens opening, and it enters through the lens via an aperture. So the lens opening is known as the aperture. This is basically the little hole that allows light to pass through. Just like we saw with the camera obscura there, that little hole that's at the front of the box or at the front of the window or whatever it happens to be is known as the aperture, and it allows light to pass through it. That light hits a mirror that's inside the DSLR. So this is where the mirror is located in a DSLR, and it bounces the light up through a device called the pentaprism, which allows the viewer to be able to see through the camera. Located behind the mirror is the film or the image sensor. So as we can see here from this diagram, when the mirror is down, light is not reaching the film or the image sensor, and we can see through the camera. Now, if you have a DSLR, you'll know that when you press the shutter button, things go black for a second. And the reason that things go black for a second is that the mirror moves out of the way to allow light to pass through. Now, just remember, only DSLRs and film cameras have mirrors and pentaprisms. These don't have any effect on the photograph whatsoever. It's just merely a device that allows us to be able to look through the camera. Okay, and as you can see, they take up quite a bit of space. So by removing these, this is why mirrorless cameras are so much smaller, because you're taking not just the pentaprism out, but you also take out the mirror as well, which reduces the size and the weight significantly. But when we take our photograph then, so the light is still entering via our aperture, the mirror in the DSLR moves out of the way. That means we can no longer see through the DSLR, which is why your screen or your viewfinder goes black for a second. But it now means that light is now reaching the image sensor, and it reaches it for the amount of time set by the shutter speed. Okay, so the duration of time that light reaches the image sensor is set by the shutter speed. The amount of light that reaches the sensor is set by the aperture. So these are two things I'm sure you've heard of before, aperture and shutter speed. We're going to be looking at them in much more detail in future lessons. But aperture is the volume of light through the lens, and then the shutter speed decides how long the image the image sensor is exposed to light. When the exposure is finished, the mirror simply comes back down. Now, in a mirrorless camera, this is much more simplified we don't have the mirror. So basically, when we press the exposure button, the shutter button, the image sensor becomes active for the amount of time set by the shutter speed. So it just becomes active, it becomes responsive to the light, and then captures the image. This is the same with your phones. It's the same with any camera that does not have a mirror in it. Basically, the image sensor becomes active for the amount of time set by the shutter speed, and we simply see the image through the viewfinder. It's a digital image that we're seeing in real time through the viewfinder, rather than having to use a mirror and an optical viewfinder. But the process is the exact same, fundamentally is the exact same. So if there's one thing that you take away from this lesson, when we press the exposure button, light enters the lens via the lens opening. This is known as the aperture. Light is recorded for a certain amount of time via shutter speed, and then light is recorded onto the film or camera sensor that makes our photograph. Now, we can change the sensor sensitivity light. This can be changed via ISO. Okay, which again, something we'll have a look at much later on in the course. But your two primary controls for light are your aperture, that's the lens opening, and the time, which is your shutter speed. So light and time. And you can change the sensitivity of the camera sensor if you need to. So for example, if you're still not getting enough light in a dark situation, you can increase the ISO, which increases the camera's sensitivity light to make it easier for you to get the photograph. But primarily, light plus time recorded onto a light sensitive material equals exposure. So light and time recorded is an exposure, and that is what your photograph is. Light plus time recorded onto light sensitive material equals an exposure. Now, of course, there are different types of exposure, and some of these I'm sure you've come across. Too much light or time, we're going to end up with an image that's overexposed. This is where we lose detail in the brighter parts of the image. We lose color detail here. As you can see, we're losing detail in the flower. Too little light or too little time, the image is going to be too dark, it's going to be underexposed. But the correct amount of light and the correct amount of time will give us the correct exposure. And this is what we're going to be looking at as we continue on throughout these lessons, is how you can read light, how you can use your shutter speed correctly, how you can use your aperture correctly, how you can introduce ISO to get the correct exposure, and then to how you can get creative using all of these too. But I think we've covered enough in this lesson. So let's have a quick look at what is coming up in the next lesson. And we're going to be having a look at your camera in much greater detail. So we're going to demystify all the camera functions. We'll have a look at all the different buttons and what they do on your cameras. We'll talk about all the different features, your camera's mode dial. We'll dive into the menu and have a look at how you can set up your camera to perform the way that you want it to. So that is the end of this lesson. Quite a long lesson to kick things off, but I do hope that you enjoyed it, and I do hope that you took something away from this lesson, even if you are a little bit more advanced than what we covered. Now, there is a challenge. This is just for fun, but it's a good way to become a part of a community of photographers. But show us a photograph of the types of photos you like to take. You can use the hashtag #ShawPhoto. You can on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. By using that hashtag, anybody can have a look at photographs with that hashtag. So you'll be able to see what other students are doing on this course as well. And you can interact and you can chat and share tips and build a community for yourselves that we will also interact with as well. So we do have our support team checking out that hashtag too and having a look at all the great photographs that you guys are posting. Now, there are quizzes at the end of every lesson as well, just to test your knowledge on what we've covered. These are just for practice and you'll find them in your members area. But there is a final module assignment at the end of every module, and these quizzes will help you get prepared for that. There's also toolkits available for you there as well, and toolkits will give you notes, give you all the slides that we cover in these lessons, and lots of bonus content in there as well. So if you want something to take away after the course is finished, or perhaps you want to just get yourself ahead a little bit and have a look at those notes, you can access that toolkit. It's an optional purchase in your student area. Okay, so you'll find it there, and lots of other things within your student area as well. So that is the end of our very first lesson. As I said, I do hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you all again very, very soon for lesson number 2. So until then, take care of yourselves and stay safe. So long for now.